Hello and welcome to the Atlona webinar. Our topic today is setting up touch-free system control with Velocity. Let's get started with our broadcast. My name is Ken Eagle and I will be your presenter for today's webinar. And I'm excited to share with you, joining me today is our friend, the fabulous Justin Kennedy, the Atlona Product Manager for Control and Management. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Glad to get to spend some time with everyone today. You'll notice that Ken and I both share the same barber, but you know, it's our pleasure to spend time with you.
It works well for quarantine.
Yeah. It definitely does. Absolutely.
Looks like you got a few guitars since the last time we had you on a webinar.
It's same number of guitars. Yeah. I wish I could play them all. That's it.
All right, fantastic. Well, before we begin, let me take just a moment and review the GoToWebinar meeting control panel. You should see the attendee control panel and the grab tab. The control panel contains panes that can be expanded or collapsed by clicking the plus, minus, or the arrow button on the left side of each pane. To ask questions, please type your question into the questions pane. All questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Additionally, you will have a chat window where you can also send public and private messages. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and Atlona will send out the link to play back this broadcast after the webinar is complete. All right, with that, it's now time to begin our presentation. All right, Justin. Well, last month, I kicked off this touch-free AV series with David Shamir and Adam Griffin. And I started by saying that when business begins to return to a quote unquote new normal, it will most likely be with guidelines to protect employee safety and prevent the spread of COVID-19. Sanitizing surfaces, social distancing, and masks will still be with us, and these present unique challenges in office and meeting environments. Of obvious concern is the typical AV system that utilizes the touch panels or a keypad or other physical interface to control equipment and room computers or cables that provide connection to the system. Now, today, you and I are going to discuss and demonstrate how to enable AV system control with Velocity and BYOD. So that means bringing your own control interface into the room instead of touching a shared surface.
Absolutely.
All right, so what we'll do is I've got a couple of slides that you prepared. Let me flip through these here and let you introduce what we're going to do here, and then I will share control to you so you can present your screen and show us what you're doing with Velocity.
Perfect. Thanks,
Great,
Ken.
here we go.
Definitely. So as we kind of get started, what I want to do is really just give us a high-level overview of what Velocity is. I know we might have some new users out there that may not be entirely familiar with what Velocity is and how it works. But Velocity is our IP-based control, management, and scheduling platform. And so we've done some pretty interesting things with this platform by consolidating all three of those items together there to provide a really efficient and effective way to configure, no programming required, your control system applications throughout your spaces. And so this is kind of really where we are focusing on Velocity, is really those three pillars where we talk about the control, the management, and the scheduling platform that's really all integrated into one piece. So from the control side, there's very robust control for all of the Atlona products. Any Atlona products that are controlled are natively supported inside of the application, but we also have a very robust third-party library of drivers to support third-party devices from the control perspective there as well. On the scheduling side, we integrate with Office 365. Our new version 2.2 will also integrate with Exchange 2016 on-premise servers, as well as Google's G Suite scheduling platform as well. The scheduling integration is very seamless and simple from that perspective. And then we have that third piece, that third pillar of Velocity called our management platform, which is AMS, Atlona Management System. And that was integrated back in early 2020. And it is really the all-in-one way for users to be able to manage the systems, whether it's firmware updates, configuration files, or just checking device status for online, offline for all of the Atlona devices. And so those three pillars really make up the foundation of the Velocity platform in our software tool.
Excellent. And then, so from an application standpoint, I know you had, some issues here that you wanted to share with us too, and why we're having this conversation today.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost on people's minds right now is, if I'm going back into work, I'm going back to the work environment, I'm going back to a college campus, what can I do to prevent the spread of germs, to, eliminate disease that might be spread by touching something? And so there is a big push now for everything to be cleaned. Surfaces have to be cleaned, door handles, touch panels. We have touch panels now. So, how do we ensure that everything is clean every single time that we come into a new space that requires control? It's difficult to do, right? So we have some solutions that we can show you that will be helping in that. Users still need to access the technology. So even if I'm in a room, I'm still going to need to be able to turn on the display, raise and lower the volume, do the standard control, access my web conferencing functionality. So just because I don't want to touch something doesn't mean I don't necessarily still need to be able to control stuff in the rooms. And so that's where our new QR code solution comes in. And this is our Velocity Touch-Free AV, where Velocity will actually dynamically generate a QR code that the user can then scan with their own personal mobile device. Again, no application needed to be downloaded to your mobile device or to your tablet. And then we have several different options that can be set up and configured inside of Velocity for a secure login, unsecure room access if you just want everybody to have access to the QR code, and then an unsecure changing access, which is a little more appealing from a security perspective. We also have the option, if you're using either a secure login or an unsecured room access, the ability to print the QR code and then set it up in the room where you may not even have a touch panel in that room anymore to control. Users can walk in and use the system with their personal device. So lots of different options that we're going to offer, and we're going to actually walk through setting up and configuring these in Velocity. So we'll show you that here in just a few seconds.
So just to summarize then, so if I'm walking into a conference room or a classroom and I'm new to the room, there's a touch panel in the room. I may be concerned with touching that shared surface. So in lieu of that, I can take my own mobile device right here. I can walk in with this guy, scan a QR code that's either printed or on one of the Velocity touch panels, and then that control solution will pop up on my own device, and now I can control the room right from there.
Absolutely. It's a very, very germ-free way to access control inside of a space without having to touch anything.
Well, I'm tremendously excited about this. Let me go ahead and let me pass control over to you so you can share your screen with us.
Sure, absolutely.
Here we go.
Perfect.
That should pop up a window for you.
I've got it. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yep.
Okay, so just before we kind of get into the QR code functionality, I did want to give everyone a quick overview on what we have coming out here toward the end of August, and that is our new Velocity 2.2. Those of you that are familiar with the application, you're going to look at this screen and it's going to look a little bit different. So we have made some significant changes to the tool. And just to go over and highlight a couple of real quick changes that we're making with this new release. Obviously, the first thing you see is we have a new dashboard that's set up here. We've got the Explorer view right here on the top left side. We've got the gateway information, which gives me direct access to my licensing, to my devices that are offline, to my devices that are online. And so it's a really nice way to be able to navigate directly through those pertinent sets of information within Velocity. And one thing that we also added that I think is also extremely important, specifically when you're talking about complex rooms or even using our virtual gateway, which is a software-based application instead of a hardware-based application running on your local network or your infrastructure on a server in your space, is the ability to view the gateway uptime, the memory usage, CPU usage, and disk usage all from this single page here. that will tell you the performance of the gateway. So these are really good details that we're now providing right on this main dashboard to give everyone information on what's going on there. So one of the things you'll notice on this Explorer view inside of the new gateway specifically is that I now actually have access to multiple gateways. And you can see that if I, for example, expand all of my gateways, I can see all of my rooms and all of my systems across all of my gateways that I've now linked together. This is our new linked gateway functionality. It's actually very, very simple to set up, and you can see that it can tell me also that I've got rooms that might have a device that's not connected properly with my red location icon, which I could then drill down and go into those rooms to view those. But setting this up is very simple. I go to my settings, I go to gateway, and you can see that I've got these linked gateways that I've already set up here. I can simply add new gateways that I want to link by adding the IP address of those gateways, and those gateways then appear on my main dashboard in the new Velocity application. There's some really nice functionality there. Also, just real briefly, we've added that in. We've added a lot of refinements and user enhancements. But something else that we've added in for our IT perspective, from the IT department perspective, is what's called Snmp Integration. And so we now have the ability to add Snmp traps coming from Velocity that go out to a third-party system that can then catch those traps and then perform notifications or events or take an activity or an action based off of the traps that we're sending out in Velocity. And of course, the item that we're talking about today is our new feature that we're adding in called Touch-Free AV inside of Velocity, which allows us to automatically generate a QR code directly from the application. And so let's actually walk through the process of setting up the QR code. So I'm going to actually go into one of my rooms. I'm going to actually go into a building first. And it's extremely simple. All you need to do is go into the room settings. And in this room settings, you'll notice that we've got the room access options, and I've got this enabled. What this means is that users can access control for this particular room. If I turn this off, even if I had a QR code, the users would not be able to access. So it's basically a security function that allows or enables or disables the user to be able to access the QR code. Now, when I get to the QR code generation, you can see that I've got the QR codes down here at the bottom. I've got different types of security options that are currently going to be available in this next release. The first is what's called Secure Login. This Secure Login creates a static QR code that I could then print on a piece of paper or print on a Lexan and mount to a wall. And there's my ability to actually download this QR code as an image from Velocity and then use that image to print or to display wherever I would like to in that room. What this Secure Login also does, and I'll show you this, is it makes sure that the user has to have access to Velocity in order to access the control. And so to do this, basically what we would do is we would go into our user's profile and we would add a new user. And in this case, I would just enter the user, the name, the email address, user information. The temporary password will be generated, and I can then set a role type. And in this case, I want this to be the end user. Maybe it's my university professor, or it's specific people that I want to have access to. This would give them that control-only access to Velocity. They would not be able to make changes inside of the tool. And so that's very important, the way that you set the users up. But basically, anyone that has any of these roles inside of Velocity would be able to scan their QR code with their personal device and access the tool. When they log in, this will send them an email with the login info. It will provide them with this password and then prompt them to change the password on their first install. Now, that being said, if I'm a user and I'm a university professor and I'm using my own personal device, what that will actually do is it will give me the ability to store a cookie on my personal device so that I do not have to log in every time unless I cleared the cookies on my device. So again, very easy and flexible to be able to access that secured login page. QR code is going to stay the exact same for all the users. It's going to be the exact same for everyone. The next option that I want to talk to you about is the secure or the unsecure login. And as we kind of go through that, the unsecure login really is I'm accessing the system. I don't have to have a Velocity login. I don't have to have any credentials. It's basically like for a shared conference space that is maybe rented out to multiple people. Maybe it's protected by security from an entrance perspective, but anyone, once you're inside the building, you want to be able to scan the QR code and access control. This is the option for that, and this is the completely unsecured room access link there. And again, I can download that QR code that I can print and tape to the wall if I wanted to do that as well, or set to the wall. The third set of security is that unsecure but changing room access link. And what this will actually do is give the integrator the ability to configure a timeout. And so if I set this for 1 minute, for example, every 1 minute, the QR code that's generated will change. And typically, if I've got hour-long meetings and I want to set this for 60 minutes, I set that timeout for 60 minutes. And what this will actually do at the end of the 60-minute time frame, a new QR code is generated and it will automatically log out the user. And what this does is it prevents users from accessing the control once they've gone to the next room, to another meeting, down the hall, back at their desk. They bring up their mobile device and they say, "Oh, look, I still have control functionality on this phone." After that time frame is over, it will actually log them out as well. So that prevents the user from accessing the room when they're not using the room, when they're not in the room. So this is really, I think, at this point in time, the most appealing implementation, because it's secure, but it also provides that changing URL for the QR code to prevent users from accessing the room 2 hours after they've used the room in that particular instance. So those are the three options that we currently have. I will mention that we are doing some additional investigation on number one. I mentioned earlier, one of the three pillars of Velocity is our scheduling platform. And so what you might see in a near future release is a QR code that's actually tied to my Office 365 schedule or my Exchange 2016 schedule or G Suite. So as the meeting ends, it automatically removes the user from the room, the access from the room, and generates a new QR code. And so there's some really intriguing options that we're looking at on really kind of setting that up in a future release there. But definitely, if you have questions on the QR code functionality, send those over to Ken, and we'll get to those as we wrap up the end. But what I want to do next is actually walk you through the actual process of how you would scan the QR code. And so I've got my room set up, and you can actually see, I'll bring over the actual touch panel so you can view the touch panel here as well. So this is the actual touch panel that I have in my room, and you can see I have the physical panel here as well. You'll notice right on the bottom right, I've got my QR code. You can actually see that QR code there on the touch panel, and I simply walk into the room. I'll open my mobile device camera. I have not loaded any additional applications on my phone at all. So I'll walk into the room, I'll take my camera, I will scan the QR code, and you'll notice that it directly on my phone will pop up this link, and simply all I have to do is touch this link and it will launch my direct control right on my mobile device here. And so if I turn the room on, for example, you'll see on the screen that I can turn the room on there. You'll also see that I have access to all of my source equipment, my volume control, so on and so forth here. So if, for example, I wanted to raise or lower the volume, you can see that I can raise and lower the volume from my mobile device. It's actually real-time raising and lowering the volume on my touch panel in the room. I can switch sources. Basically, anything that you program and configure the touch panels to control, you can actually do from the mobile device without having to add an additional app, without having to basically do any touching of any of the devices inside of the physical room there. So it becomes a very compelling solution, specifically when we are talking about these times of making sure that everything is clean, preventing the spread of disease, and everybody's obviously wanting to stay healthy during this time frame as well.
Wow, that's great, Justin. Man, that was easy. I mean,
it's quick and easy, literally seconds.
Here, you saw you configure it, and then you take your mobile device and scan it just like that, and you're immediately controlling the room. This is really cool. I think this is a game changer. And I know a lot of our partners and our customers are going to love this and love this demo. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and let's, I think you have to give up control on your end, and
Sure,
I'll go back
absolutely.
to the slide deck. We'll continue on here. Yeah, there we go. It's somewhere on my side. It's trying to give me control, I think, but give me 1 second. Where's it at?
I do want to mention while he's doing that, I also want to mention that we do support this on our scheduling panel as well. And so let me actually pull up a scheduling panel here. So on my scheduling panel, you can see that I also have the QR code there. And so if I only had a scheduling panel outside the room, the user could also scan the QR code on the scheduling panel and take control of the room again from that perspective there. So that would eliminate the need for a touch panel in the room. You could have only a scheduling panel on the outside, scan the QR code, and then the user could actually then take control with their mobile device inside the room.
Wow, that's really cool. Great, thank you for sharing that too. Fantastic.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, let's now that we've seen, how these touchless features work with Velocity, let's take a look at a couple of modern business solutions that we can employ today using these tools, Justin, that you just talked about, mixed with some of the Atlona products. And we'll also refer back to, if you recall, 2 weeks ago, we did an AV session with Seth Powell where we talked about automatic display control and automatic input selection, and these solutions will tie into those as well. So first we'll look at video conference rooms. So the Atlona Omega MS42 is an ideal product here. It's a 4x2 matrix switcher with an HD-based transmitter with HDMI, DisplayPort, and USB inputs, and mirrored HDMI and HD-based outputs. It's perfect for video conferencing applications with built-in USB switching, and it's a perfect touchless solution that can utilize automatic display control and automatic input selection features, and it pairs perfectly with Velocity. A second example would be using wired or wireless BYOD rooms. Now this can be done with the SW510W, which we've had out for quite a while, or the new Omega MS52W. Now the MS52W is also a wireless AV gateway and a matrix switcher, and it delivers complete yet simplified AV system integration for collaborative meeting spaces and video conferencing applications with built-in USB switching, and it's a perfect touchless solution, also with automatic display control, automatic input selection, and occupancy triggers built in, and it pairs perfectly with the Velocity control solution that we just saw as well. And one final application you can immediately jump into is with classrooms and lecture halls using the Omega PS62, which is a 6x2 matrix presentation switcher with HDMI, USB-C, and HD-based-T inputs. Plus, it also supports HDMI and HD-based-T outputs. The PS62 is ideal for active learning environments as well as meeting rooms and conference rooms, and it too is a perfect touchless solution that supports automatic display control, automatic input selection, and pairs perfectly with Velocity and the QR touch-free solution we just saw that Justin demonstrated for us. Now, today is the third and final webinar in our touch-free AV webinar series, but all 3 webinars have been recorded. They are posted online. I put the address right there on the webpage for you. You're welcome to copy that down, or you can go to atlona.com, hover over the resources menu, and click on our webinars button. From the webinars page, there's a big orange button right in the upper right corner that says Webinar Archive, and from there you can see all of our archive webinars, including these 3 right there. So feel free to jump back, watch any of these, share them with your partners and your customers and your colleagues as well. And don't forget about Atlona Academy. It's another great resource to learn about all of the controls and solutions that we've talked about throughout the Touch-Free AV webinar series, including the new stuff that Justin just showed us today. Everything carries AVIXA and CEDIA accredited points, so you can get valuable accredited continuing education credits by going through Atlona Academy, and it's completely free. If you don't have an ID, visit atlona.com, click on the training button and sign up today and get immediate access. Also, don't forget about our YouTube channel where we post all of these simple videos on how to set up all these great features with our products. Dozens of videos, hours of digestible snippets. Learn no matter where you are. Take our Atlona training experts with you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss out. Now, Justin, we've had a bunch of questions coming in throughout the presentation here. So let's take a few moments here and go back in and address some of these.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so a couple of these I think may have come in and you may have addressed them after when we did the demos. Somebody did ask where will the QR code appear? I think we saw that. If you want to address that, we just real quickly though, I know we saw that.
Sure. So inside of Velocity on the touch panel configuration page, there is an option to add the QR code to the page. And so it can show up either on the control page of the control panel or on the scheduling page of the scheduling panel. And they'll both be on the main page there so that you don't have to touch the panel to dive in to access the QR codes.
Another one, you did touch on this, but someone asked, how does the touch panel know to display the QR code? I assume it will go to sleep in between room uses.
So you can actually set up the panel to not go to sleep. If you do set the panel to go to sleep, our current VTP touch panels and VSP scheduling panels have a motion sensor. And so as you walk in front of the panel, they will turn back on again without touching. So you can then scan the QR code from that perspective.
Excellent. Another great question here. For the QR code access of rooms, does the personal device need to be on the same subnet as the touchscreen? Excellent
question. So it doesn't necessarily need to be on the same subnet as the touchscreen. However, it does need to be on the same subnet as the control gateway, the Velocity gateway. That's a great question because in some cases that might not be feasible. And so what we're actually doing is we're doing some investigation right now to determine how we can come up with a solution that can help in this particular issue.
Excellent. Is the QR code on screen or printed out on the table? And I think you told us it can be done both ways, actually.
You do it either way, absolutely. The only way you're going to get the dynamic QR code is if you use the touch panel, right? You can't dynamically change, otherwise you're printing a new QR code every hour or however often you've set the timeout to run.
Question here, how does this affect licensing costs?
So from a licensing perspective, this solution today is no additional charge.
Oh, we like that. That's great. Here's another question, Velocity related, but not QR code. Can Velocity scheduling work without an external mail server?
Yes, it actually can. We do have what's called our generic scheduling option that is available. And basically you can create we have a template, but you can modify that template CSV file and upload it to Velocity or load it onto a server and have Velocity retrieve that CSV file every however often, I think it's 5 minutes or something like that, to provide the updated schedule. So you could do this without a scheduling platform altogether if you wanted to.
Can the QR codes be generated for each individual use of the system? For example, a different code each time for different classes throughout the day or week?
Excellent question. So today, the solution provides the rotating QR code by time. So if you set that up by time, you could. In the future, we are looking at tying that into scheduling. And so if those rooms or classrooms were booked on a scheduling system that was tied into Velocity, we could enable the QR code to change at the end of each of those scheduled times. And that's coming soon. Not in this next release, but coming soon.
Excellent. Good. Can the authorization in the cookie have time limits established?
That is the exact timeout that we were talking about. Yes.
Yep.
So after that timeout, your cookie's gone. The user would no longer have access after that time.
Question here, can you create custom GUI layout I think they may just be referring to the touch panel itself.
Yes, definitely. We do have a custom GUI design tool built into Velocity that will allow you to customize the UI however you would like to.
Can you tell us how we can arrange floors in order?
Yes, so in 2.2, there is actually a floor reorder functionality that we've implemented. It's a graphical functionality that will allow you to basically reorder your rooms within those floors however you would like to.
Excellent. What happens to active devices after the timeout? Does it shut down everything?
Basically, they would get a 404 on the URL.
Gotcha.
So a non-available to access. Page not available.
All right. Next question here reads, so if a secure Velocity user operates the AV system in room 1 and then goes to another meeting in room 2, could they accidentally still be controlling the AV system in room 1 when they're trying to operate room 2?
That is certainly could be an issue. This is why we've included that timeout, so that at the end of that certain time frame, the user gets logged out. Interestingly enough, yes, they could if they brought up the control interface from a different room and they didn't have the timeout set, or it was prior to the timeout, they would still be controlling that other room until they rescan the new QR code in the current room that they're in.
Excellent. Next question here. Unsecure changing room access. Are the time limits initiated upon first user login, or is it set to specific times? For example, 60-minute timer starts on the hour every hour.
It's a first user. So as soon as you log in, that timer starts and it'll count down.
What if you are not using the customer or the stakeholder's Wi-Fi? How would you access the system wirelessly?
Excellent question, and that goes kind of back to my my answer that this is something that we are actively investigating, and we plan to have a solution to be able to work around this.
If you are changing QR codes, does the system shut down after the code changes?
No, not necessarily. If you're changing QR codes, the system would still be up and running. If you ended that 60-minute time frame and you were logged out, there would be no one turning the system off at that point. So it would still be on. You would have to rescan the QR code and then log out to turn the system off, or hit the room off button to shut it down.
Excellent. How many people can have control on their device at one time?
So in this initial release, we have not limited the number of users. So you could have 2 or 3 different people controlling at the same time. What I will say is that, 2 or 3 people controlling at the same time could also be a conflict, but 2 or 3 people controlling at the same time could also be a benefit if someone is doing a presentation and another person wants to control and adjust volume or something along those lines.
Good point. Yep.
So it's a double-edged sword.
All right. Next question here. Zoom, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, etc. Show on your phone when you control the room. I think they're asking if you can see them when you're controlling the room.
If you can see the Zoom room?
Yeah.
So if I have added a Zoom room to my UI and I bring up the interface on my phone, I will see the exact same UI. So if I've got a Zoom room running on the touch panel, I will see the Zoom room controls running on the phone.
Yep, gotcha. All right, networking question here. What is the range of the touchless solution? If we rack the item in another room, how far can the phone work?
So the phone operates over network.
Yeah.
And so as long as you're on the same AV network, AV LAN as the gateway, anywhere within the network.
Somebody asks, how hackable are cookies on a phone?
Good question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head on that.
So we can investigate and get back to for sure.
Sure, we could absolutely. If they would just shoot me a quick message, I will get you some details.
Yep.
At least
Justin's
specifically with
right
our
there on the
cookies,
screen.
right? So,
yeah.
Definitely.
Is this QR code available in Velocity 2.1.3?
Not in 2.1.3. This is a 2.2 release that we are currently targeting for end of August. So only a few weeks away from here.
All right. Is the QR code compatible on iOS, Android, and Windows?
The QR code is compatible on any mobile device because it uses the device's browser.
Is the QR positionable on the touch panel, or does it always show up in the same location?
Currently, in this next release, it's fixed in a fixed location. However, we are planning to add the QR code to basically a panel widget that you could then customize however you wanted to in your custom UI pages.
Are we able to have self-generating QR code on the customized GUI?
So the answer is not on the custom UI today. It is coming soon. What you can do is basically display the main start page with the QR code. If you wanted no other buttons on that screen, you could do that, and then have your device access the custom UI pages. But you do have to enable the QR code on that main page.
Gotcha. When the system hits the cookie timeout, what happens to the AV devices being controlled?
The user would lose control of those devices. Like I said, basically, your cookie gets refreshed, and you would get a page not found on the mobile device.
All right. What if you have a scheduled QR code set for 60 minutes and the conference goes longer than the timer? Do you lose control?
You would lose control. You would need to then rescan the QR code. As I mentioned, it will dynamically generate after that 60-minute timeout. Rescan the new QR code, and then actually enables you another 60 minutes.
Gotcha. So another comment here. So to clarify, you can only use the wireless system if you are on the Wi-Fi. So we set up an independent network. Does that not have wireless? This will not work. Yeah, if they set up an independent network that does not have wireless, will this not work?
So yes, that's correct. If the user does not have a tunnel into the control AV network, which there are secure ways to do, to create a Wi-Fi access point that has a specific tunnel to a specific gateway, an IP address of a gateway. There are secure ways to implement that, but yes, without the connection to the gateway, the user doesn't have control today. We're looking at other options in the future.
All right. Do you have a control app?
We do have an iOS and an Android app. What we've actually found is that the QR code, when you scan the QR code, is easier for the users from the perspective of they don't have to download any specific apps. But if you want to, yes, we do have both iOS and Android.
Excellent. And then one final question here. Sure. Does 2 or 3 people control just act as last action takes precedence? So if you had multiple people connected controlling it, what's the order of control? That is a
correct statement. The last button press would be the function that would be executed.
Excellent. All right, Justin, that's all of our time today. We have answered all of the questions that have come in. If you have more, please submit those to my email address or Justin's email address that are there, or you can send email to training@atlona.com at any time if you have a question. This has been recorded. It will be posted. We will be sending up a follow-up email with a link to this recording so that you can access this. And don't forget about the previous 2 that we did in the series. Access those as well. Again, everyone, thank you for your time today. It was our pleasure to be able to talk to you about the QR code. Thank you, Justin, for being on the webinar today.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you got it. Everyone stay safe and have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care.